Confidence is the present tense of hope. It is not the path which is the difficulty. Rather, it is the difficulty which is the path. Most people seek pleasure in ways they will never find. Listen to these Soren Kierkegaard quotes and open your heart to the true joys of the soul today. Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. People demand freedom of speech as a compensation for the freedom of thought, which they seldom use. Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. People understand me so poorly that they don't even understand my complaint about them not understanding me. Life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced. The most common form of despair is not being who you are. The most painful state of being is remembering the future, particularly the one you'll never have. What if everything in the world were a misunderstanding? What if laughter were really tears? Do it or don't do it. You will regret both. Knowledge is a wealth that cannot be stolen. Once you label me, you negate me. To dare, to lose one's footing momentarily. Not to dare is to lose oneself. There are two ways to be fooled. One is to believe what isn't true. The other is to refuse to believe what is true oneself. It is impossible to exist without passion. For without risk, there is no faith. And the greater the risk, the greater the faith. Man always hopes for what he should remember, and forever remembers what he should hope for. The self-assured believer is a greater sinner in the eyes of God than the troubled disbeliever. Leap of faith, yes, but only after reflection. The thing that cowardice fears most is decision. The unhappy person is never present to themselves because they always live in the past or the future. Wherever there is a crowd, there is untruth. Why bother remembering a past that cannot be made into a present? The question is not to be or not to be. It is what we should be until we are not. The truth is a trap. You cannot get it without it getting you. You cannot get the truth by capturing it, only by its capturing you. On the secretly blushing cheek is reflected the glow of the heart. Our life always expresses the result of our dominant thoughts. Happiness is the greatest hiding place for despair. It is very important in life to know when your cue comes. my sorrow is my castle. Take away the paradox from the thinker, and you have a professor. A no does not hide anything, but a yes very easily becomes a deception. In order to help another effectively, you must understand what he understands. Instruction begins when you put yourself in his place so that you may understand what he understands, and in the way he understands it. Once you are born in this world, you're old enough to die. Hope is a passion for the possible. Cultivate the will. This is the armor that preserves the mind. The function of prayer is not to influence God, but rather to change the nature of the one who prays. Therefore, do not deceive yourself. Of all deceivers, fear most yourself. The more people who believe something, the more apt it is to be wrong. The person who's right often has to stand alone. If you want to be loathsome to God, just run with the herd. Only the noble of heart are called to difficulty. My standpoint is armed neutrality. The only intelligent tactical response to life's horror is to laugh defiantly at it. To be lost in spiritlessness is the most terrible thing of all. What is youth? A dream. What is love? The dream's content. We were given the commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. But if this commandment is correctly understood, then you can read in it the opposite statement. You must love yourself properly. We pretend to be unable to understand life because we know very well that the minute we understand, we are obliged to act accordingly. Whoever has learned to be anxious in the right way has learned the ultimate. Most people are subjective toward themselves and objective toward all others. Frightfully objective sometimes, but the task is precisely to be objective toward oneself and subjective toward all others. It is better to get lost in the passion than to lose the passion. The highest and most beautiful things in life are not to be heard about, nor read about, nor seen, but, if one will, are to be lived. I would rather be a swineherd, understood by the swine, than a poet misunderstood by men. Life has its own hidden forces, which you can only discover by living. Truth always rests with the minority, and the minority is always stronger than the majority, because the minority is generally formed by those who really have an opinion, while the strength of a majority is illusory. Far from the idleness being the root of all evil, it is rather the only true good. People settle for a level of despair they can tolerate and call it happiness. To be a woman is something so strange, so confusing, and so complicated that only a woman could put up with it. Sleeping is the height of genius. Our life is a game of whose rules we don't know. For it is not what happens to me that makes me great, but it is what I do. Faith is the highest passion in a man. You become what you understand. Life has become a bitter drink to me, and yet it must be taken in drops, counted one by one. Be that self that one is. Faith begins precisely where thinking leaves off. I opened my eyes and saw the real world, and I began to laugh, and I haven't stopped since. Learn not to tell anything to anyone, because only then your life will definitely get better. What distinguishes all love from lust is the fact that it bears an impression of eternity. The best response to criticism is to smile and forget. The highest, after all, is not to comprehend the highest, but to do it. If you don't have many friends, that means you have a lot of life experience. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. The more silent you are, the more you are able to hear. To be human is not a fact, but a task. These quotes from Soren Kierkegaard not only show his critical thinking, but also gives us a way to understand this philosophical genius. Thank you for watching.